Peace and Grand Rising. Today is September the 4th, 1442 on the ancient moon calendar, 1443 on the ancient sun calendar, and 2022 on the Greco-Roman calendar. All rise and stand and remain standing into perpetuity. This is a sovereign living ancient, Article 3, Moorish American, Al-Moroccan, consular court action. We are the sovereign living justices in capitis diminution nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. I am sovereign living justice, Pauline Denise Ritchie. My free chosen sovereign appellation is Light to Jure Bay. Both are in capitis diminution nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. All Moors are the original indigenous, sovereign, ancient, Al-Moroccan, Moorish American ascendants of the great pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith and trust, our allegiance, our credit, and our energy are hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the people who are the original indigenous, natural, divine, sovereign, ancient empire state of Morocco, the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government, ancient Washington District 4, Columbia, the Universal Moorish American Consulate, and the Article 3 Moorish American Consular Court. Today, we are executing the law by our own sovereign capacity, which is the original indigenous, natural, divine, sovereign, ancient Article 3 living United States District 4 Columbia Liquidation Court, and we are the sovereign fiduciaries, receivers, secured creditors, executors, trustees, ministers, claimants, and beneficiaries in this concluding cause for action. We are peace, we are one nation, one state, one empire, and one God. We hereby accept our sovereign ascension, issue a state and federal creditors' bill for possession against all judgment debtors, and exercise all sovereign rights at this time and at all points in time, nunc pro tunc. We have just a few points that we want to make before we get into the subject matter for our Congressional Assembly today. The first thing that I want to say is recently in the last week, and I believe the majority of the shift, this electronic, the electrical peak shift that we just went through, reached its maximum sometime over this past weekend. And when I say this past weekend, not this one, but the previous weekend. So we've just come through yet another energetic shift, and many of you, I know you had to have felt that shift. And what the shift is saying to us is go back through all that you have learned from the day you found out who you were. Go back through all of the notes that you took, the videos that you watched, the demonstrations that you did. Go back through all of that, look at it again, put the tools together, and then use those tools. So when that shift first happened, one of the things that I felt, because I at first I misinterpreted the energy. The energy felt like I had been moved back to the first month of my declaring my nationality in 2017. I literally felt myself shift on the timeline back to 2017. And the feeling initially was, what have we learned? What do we know? My misinterpretation of that was, it felt like we were starting all over from the beginning. That's what I felt for about 2 hours in the last few days. And that energy felt very weird. It was just a different kind of energy. And then as the ancestors started moving my sight back up across all of the things that we've done since then, what they were saying in the spirit realm is go back to the beginning, look back over all of the things that you've learned, look at the notes, Look at the videos that you've done from the beginning, because they're all on the public record. Look at all of that, because what we've essentially been through more since we started waking up. Even if you just woke up last week, you've been through this same thing that we've been through, which is in our sleep they used to call it a crash course, where you would just fly through a bunch of lessons really quickly and learn as much as you can in time for this test, at the end of the term, where they were trying to squeeze a whole year into 3 months. Well, we've been through something similar to that, but it's not a crash course, it's a rising course. It's a course in government. It's a course in airship. It's a course in managing and governing the vast estate. And so we've had some on-the-job training. We've had POW demonstrations where people are Moors have been demonstrating, and sometimes they end up going to jail, and then they come out of jail, and we don't stay in jail long because everyone is aware of what was going on, of what that was all about, why we were even demonstrating that, including the people that escort us to the jail. They knew what we were doing, and so none of us stayed in there for any extended length of time. And so that was all on-the-job training for where we are now. And so the ancestors are saying to each and every one of us, even if you've only been awake for a week, go back to whatever it is you first heard that woke you up, that caused you to say, wait a minute, I think there's something to this. Go back to that and look at that. Look at the things you've written down. Look at the notes you've taken. Look at what you've placed on the public record. Look back at it and then bring it all together and prepare to demonstrate all of it together. Okay, so and that demonstration is actually the way that we live for the rest of our time. The demonstration is a permanent demonstration. We take what we know and just integrate it into our lives on an everyday basis. So it's going to be very beautiful to see that manifestation of everything that we've learned and how we're going to be growing and rising continually with that information. So if you felt that energy shift, congratulations. If you didn't feel it, don't worry. But you will feel it. Some people feel the energy shift immediately, and others it saturates over time. But every one of us absorbs that energy. Okay, and so if you didn't feel it, a shift or some change like that, don't worry, because it's going to saturate slowly, or it might hit you all at once at a different time period. So and it's a beautiful feeling. It can be a little when you know what's happening, it won't scare you when you know that, okay, the ancestors are speaking. Everything that happens is them saying things to us. No matter what it is, they're saying something to us. And our response is always going to be ourselves on our own land. With that being said, we do have our full moon fast coming up September 9th, 10th, and 11th. That's in about 5 days. And feel free to fast however you choose to fast, however you're led to fast. If you do water only for the entire 3-day time period, drink plenty more water than you've ever drank during that time period, and it will help you get through. I generally do water and sea salt that I've harvested. So I don't use the sea salt in the grocery store. I go and actually pull the sea water, the salty water, and then boil it down to the salt, and I take that salt. on my fast time as well, because it helps to make the body more alkaline and it cleans things out. The same way that it does, that salt does meat. You know, we didn't have refrigerators previously. We would just salt the meat, and that kept it fresh for a long, long time, actually. So it does the same thing for our flesh as well. Next, I wanted to show you briefly something that I saw that I found a little bit interesting on the U.S. State Department website. They have begun putting some updates up on the State Department website. It's executive summaries for different parts about for international law and how we deal with other nations. And when I say we are not the dead United States Corporation Company. We are the living States United, okay? And they were just modeling for us. But something that I saw on there, and I'll put the link to this in the chat. Here's the link on the screen for those who want to copy these links. Or if you cannot get to the chat, I'll go ahead and put it in the chat. And they have this these executive summaries for each of the other places. This executive summary says and we don't agree with all of this, but I just wanted to point some things out. It says the Constitution states, and this is regarding Egypt. And as I'm reading this, just know that Tennessee territory is ancient Egypt. Okay, ancient Egypt is here and not over there. Okay, over there is a modern version of ancient Egypt here, so we honor them as well. The Constitution states freedom of belief is absolute, and the freedom of practicing religious rituals and establishing worship places for the followers of divine religions, i.e., the three Abrahamic faiths, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, is a right regulated by law. The Constitution states citizens are equal before the law and criminalizes discrimination and incitement to hatred based upon religion, belief, sex, origin, race, or any other reason. And we know that there's no such thing as race and all of that. Either you're original and indigenous to the earth and to the land, or you're not. That's what there is. That's who there are on the land. It says the Constitution also states Islam is the religion of the state, and the principles of Islamic Sharia are the main sources of legislation. It says the government officially recognizes Sunni Islam, Christianity, and Judaism and allows only their adherents to publicly practice their religion and build houses of worship. The Constitution stipulates the canonical laws of Jews and Christians form the basis of legislation governing their personal status, religious affairs, and selection of spiritual leaders. I just want to point a couple of things out about this. First of all, the Islam that we know and that we use is not a religion in the sense of modern religion. It is the law. Islam is I, self, law, am, master. It always has been since time immemorial. So it's not a religion where we go and we, bow 5 times a day and do all of these things. Who does God pray to? We are God. And so we don't have to do that. Now, for those sovereigns who want to do it, it's fine. You can do that because you're sovereign. When they talk about the Constitution, all constitutions have a state religion. If there is a constitution for a state, and that's what that is a demonstration of statehood, is having a constitution, then there is some principles and practices associated with that constitution that are linked to that constitution. And so Islam is the religion of the state. And again, you know, Islam, for us, Islam is the law for our state. It's the law. And what is the law? The law is the supreme law of the land, the treaties, the constitutions, and any laws that we state and that we vote on and that we put forth. Okay? The laws that we put in our affidavits, that's the law for our state. So, and then we legislate our laws. Okay? And then legislation governing their personal status. We know that this is not really talking about us because there's no way to legislate our status. Our status just is what it is. It's a bloodline and birthright status since time immemorial. Before there ever was legislation, we were. But I just wanted to point this out as an interesting fact concerning Egypt, because as the maps are put back into their proper place, which we've done that, and we're going to continue to do that, knowing that this is Africa that we're on, this is ancient Egypt, this is Morocco, all this is the Maghreb, Al-Aqsa, and Turtle Island, and all of those things. It's Jerusalem, it's Israel, it's Canaan land, it's, you know, our land has throughout time had many different appellations, just like we as a people have had many different appellations, and that's where all of the, you know, sometimes there's some confusion in, you know, some will say, are we this or are we that? Are we Moors or are we Moorish? Are we Israelites or are we, who are we? Well, we're all. We are the all. And the sovereigns are the ones who determine who they are. So it was interesting to look on the website and see that the website is essentially endorsing what it states here. Okay. So I just wanted to point that out. On another level or another subject matter. So whenever we go into a room or whenever we're going down the street and someone waves and we wave back, we put up our hand and we go, you know, and we wave. Do we know and do we realize that that is affirming a covenant? And that is why it's been pushed so heavily in the media, you know, of waving. And then a lot of the custom was to wave or to speak or to greet or to say, you know, they say don't walk into a room unless you speak to everyone. And there's nothing wrong with that. So in the ancient past, when two parties wanted to make a blood covenant with one another, they would take a knife and cut the palms of their hands and press their palms together to mingle the blood and make the covenant that cannot be broken by any outside parties. Afterwards, no matter how long the two parties had been apart, if they entered a crowded room and saw each other from far away, they would put their hands in the air to reveal the scar that signified the covenant, and their greeting would affirm and renew the covenant again. Think of how many places that you have gone that where you were said, you know, you were told throw your hands in the air and raise them like you just don't care and all of that, or you would go places and and they would say, raise your right hand, or you would go places and they would say, lift your hands in prayer. So we have been doing rituals. Oh, and yes, and Empress Shasha, high five, all of that. All of that is a covenant. That's a covenant. And that is why it was pushed in the media, so that we would unknowingly, seemingly continue to make a covenant with those that we never really had a covenant with. We didn't have a covenant with them. And that's not a divisive statement. It's just a truth. It's a fact. We didn't have a covenant like that. Not that kind of covenant. The Creator does have a covenant with her creation. So therein lies the covenant, but that covenant existed before we got here. And our creation had their place, and we have our place. And the Biblios Heliotech calls it dominion over all. So, you know, a lot of especially the greetings, a lot of that, those are all rituals. So everything that we are actually in the process of rethinking everything that we've ever done. Rethinking it, look at it, and see if that's something that still serves us well. If it serves us, then okay. If it does not, then we let it go. We bid it farewell in peace. From my perspective, if I enter a room filled with Moors, I'm throwing my hands up. Because we do have a covenant one with another. It's a blood covenant that we can't even, it's been since time immemorial, and it will always be. In the past, sometimes there have been people who say, oh, I'm not a part of the consulate anymore. Or, and I'll just use myself as an example. There were 2 or 3 who said, Light, you're no longer a part of the judiciary, and you're no longer a part of this and that. Well, that's a blood position. It's not a position where people vote you in and vote you out. All of us, we all have blood positions. It's kind of like the quote-unquote mafia. They used to say, you got to die to get out the mafia. Well, for us, commercially, you have to give your person to a corpse in order for you to get out of this. And even then, you're still not out. We're one, and we always will be. That is never going to change. And the sleeping Moors, they're one with us too. They just have to wake up and realize it. So this is not a membership card thing, where you get a membership card, and then whenever somebody gets mad at you, they take the membership card back and say, okay, you're out of here. You're out of this nation. No, there's no getting out, because it's unless you have a blood transfusion with some other species, But even then, our blood is so strong that it will reconstitute. So even then, it's, because we're magic like that. So I wanted to point that out, just in case anyone was wondering where all of that hi came from. Hi, how are you? Or throwing up your hand or whatever. And they always had you do that with your neighbors, quote unquote, because our neighbors were supposed to be each other according to our prophet anyway. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said we need to be all living near each other and living together and domiciling together, So this whole piece of manifesting our cities is going to be a part of all of that. And so that's why you're seeing movement. Groups are moving out of this place or that place, and some are moving in. coming together. That's what all of this has been about from the very beginning, is to restore the estate. And in order to restore the estate, we have to come together, and there's no place on our land that we are not. So wherever you are right now, that is actually going to be, if you choose, that's going to be a sovereign city. And it already is, really, because you're there. So then we have to start looking at the responsibilities of the city. What does the city do? What are the city responsibilities? Court. That's what quote unquote municipal courts were. They were supposed to be city courts, where a sovereign city does its sovereign business. It was never supposed to be some corporate something that, where people are denationalized and all of that. It was never supposed to be that. Cities had, well, we can look at ancient Rome and see what a very powerful city does and how it operates and what it has the authority to do. Okay. And we're going to be looking at all of that today and over time. So having said that, I wanted to, in my studies, I come across information that seems like it's piecemeal information, but it all fits together, because I know now that everything that ever was done had everything to do with us. So I'm going to open the table at this time, and I'll just put it in mute. And whenever you want to unmute yourselves, you can. You can by doing *6. Do you know, and this is just a brief history lesson for the heirs to all land, all natural resources, and all commerce. So now that we know who we are, do you know what the Vietnam War was really about? Do you know where the war actually took place, where it was acted out in theater? And do you know that it was about you? Because I've been looking at the history and trying to see, okay, what is all of this about? Why are we being shown this type of theater? So I did a little bit of research. And when you think of the Vietnam War, what faces do you see when you think about the Vietnam War? Just out of curiosity, when someone says Vietnam War, what faces do you see? Anyone can respond. Islam nobility.
It looked like Chinese or Philippines.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You see people with,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you. Okay. I guess maybe. Okay. Yes, those are the people that you think about, because that is what the media pushed. I want to place on the table today what that was really about, because it was so not about what we thought it was about. Okay? And what we were told it was about. Islam nobility.
I did see something. I did come across some saying it was about us being down in the Moors, and it was about the gold, something to do with gold in that territory. I saw something.
Yes.
I recall everything.
Yes. It was indeed and is about all perceived wars have been about resources, natural resources. But in order to access the natural resources, there had to be a system put in place to do that, because you can't just go and start digging things up. You actually have to have a financial system and a system put in place so that you can give an account for those resources. So now, what is the system that we have uncovered and said, okay, we have to abolish the foreign commercial mercenaries' ability to use this platform, and we have to take that platform back with our fiduciary document? What is the name of that system that we have just completely taken control of?
Islam capitalism.
Yes, 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 yes. Everything that had to do with that thing called a stock market and all of that, that was all capitalism, but it was dead corporate capitalism. We do living capitalism. Now, capitalism is about who's the head. Who is the head? Well, whoever the head is, they do things first in capitis diminutio nolo, everything in all lowercase letters. And they don't have names, they have appellations, and that's us. We don't have names, we have appellations in our sovereign status. And then, if we want to come together with others and be a state, we can use our in capitis diminutio minima, which is the first letter capitalized and the rest of the letters lowercase, in order to speak back and forth to each other, to do things, to acquire things, etc. And then we use all capital letters, our living natural person, to do other things, to do other types of commerce. In corpus sanctum commerce, which means living body, or holy body, or sanctified body. So in order for the dead United States Corporation Company to even do anything, they first had to act out, and because we know they're actors, they had to act out decapitating the heirs. They just acted because they can't really do it. They just acted. Decapitating the heirs on paper and then making themselves the head. And that is by way of the name, right? So now, I did some research on Vietnam and all of that, and come to find out, Moors, even the word Vietnam, even that word is not a quote-unquote Asian language word. It is not. The word Vietnam is French. V means life, et means and, nam means name. Just like SESTQV, those are French words. It's about the life of the heirs. Who is the living and who's the dead? So whenever we saw things about Vietnam now, and again, this is above the 33rd degree type information right here. Whenever we saw them putting things on the TV about Vietnam this and Vietnam that, they were signaling to the whole earth that they have acted out decapitation of the names on paper and taken the life for those names. So they're pretending to be the heirs. Life and name. Now, if you look at the years that they say that the quote-unquote Vietnam War was, they say some say 1945 until 1970 something, 1975. Some say 1955 until 1970 something. Well, if you think about what was going on with the Moors during that time period, then you know that it was all about capitalism and putting the capitalism in place for corpses and corporations doing business as the United States Corporation Company. That's what they were doing. Putting capitalism in place in all of these different places during that time period. In 1955, what was happening? Well, that was that was the year before the quote-unquote consular court was supposedly closed down here on the land, right? So then with the courts seeming to be closed down, Moors then, anytime we go into a fake court, anytime we were to go into a fake court previously, decapitation occurred. Capitalizing of the name occurred. And life was taken from the paper. And that is because someone else was in control of a person, and we would claim the dead person instead of the living person. And the living person is a servant to us. So Vietnam is life and name, and so that's actually a French word. And remember, in the 1950s also, that was when France and the United States were in the International Court of Justice jockeying for jurisdiction over the Moors because they knew that this had happened. And so then I said, well, if that be the case, let me look up a few other words and see what they mean. When they talk about this war, they talk about specific battles that happen and things like that. They were signaling to one another. One of the things that they had going on was something called the 1968 Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive, Tet is T-E-T. They called it the bloodiest, battle of the whole Vietnam War. It was the bloodiest, the 1968 Tet Offensive. And it was part of the so-called Vietnam War, and the Vietnamese, quote unquote, the Vietnamese called it the 1968 Young Earth Monkey Tet event. Because, see, they knew what was going on, too. And Moors, we already know about that whole Earth Monkey piece. Okay, so they knew, so they called it this. Well, I said, well, what does the word Tet even mean? Tet means head. That means that they had officially, from their perspective, gotten the Moors where they wanted them to be. And what was happening in 1968 with the Moors? We were supposedly marching for civil rights. Supposedly marching for civil rights. And they said, okay, let's get rid of the head of that civil rights movement, and then we can just sign them all up, and they'll sign up, and we'll capitalize all of that, and then we'll remove the gold standard, quote unquote, from the citizens, because see, they think they're citizens. That way none of them will have gold. And then they'll be all using fiat. And then in 1971, what happened? Bretton Woods. August 15th, 1971, Bretton Woods. And that was after they got all of the sleeping Moors to sign a petition to make Martin Luther King's birthday a holiday. They said, all right, whole earth, we got them. We got them. They're all signing. We got them. So now let's make a few more moves. So they were actually speaking French when people thought that it was Vietnamese that they were talking about. But that's not who they were talking about. They were talking about us, the Moors. So then I said, let me do just a couple more of these words because this is just crazy. Let me just do it. Just see. So then I went to Wikipedia, and Wikipedia was talking about the different battles and things like that. You know, what kind of, you know, what battle, there's one of the most famous battles was the Battle of Saigon. Part 3, the Vietnam War, Saigon. So I said, what does Saigon mean? Because that's a 2-part word, and we know when we start pulling words apart, we get to the etymology of the word. So I said, let me just look up Sai and see. Well, when you say Saigon, you're saying, do they even know, or has their knowing gone all the way? That means they don't know. They don't know anymore. Everything is done. Look up the War of Saigon and when it was. That was when they were proclaiming, okay, the Moors don't know we're talking about them. Yes, in the chat, Justice Morpheus said one of the many reasons the corporations was giving Muhammad Ali the major problems because he knew that the Vietnamese were our brothers and sisters by bloodline and birthright. They are actually descendants of ours, which is you and I are brothers and sisters, and they are descendants. And descendant, you can spell it with an A or with an E, and it has a different meaning depending on how you spell it. They are descendants with an A. Our heirs are descendants with an E. So it's all in the spelling. It's all in the spelling. So get an older dictionary and look up the word descendant with an A and then descendant with an E. And it means 2 different things. They're similar, but they're not the same. They're different. With that being said, yes, the Great Tumult. It was all about capitalism, capitalism, capitalism. Let me see what you say here. Saigon, I can't really see what that says in the chat. Saigon.
Islam. Mm-hmm. It says, former name of Ho Chi Minh City, capital of former South Vietnam, 1954 to 76.
The capital. From 54, now I just told you how long that thing went. Vietnam, 1955 to the mid-1970s. And 1976 is actually when they said it ended.
Yeah, that was a former name.
The capital city. The capital city is where the paperwork is done to capitalize names.
Mm-hmm.
That's what capital cities are all about, capitalism. And the type of city determines who it is that's altering the names. Vatican City is it was a capital city for the churches. So all the churches turned all of the names of those tithe envelopes that you signed and those tax statements that you signed so you could get a tax break for donating to the church and all of that. They turned all of those names over to the Vatican City, that capital city.
Yes, Mom, and the thing I formerly put previously in the chat, it says it listed several names that the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, and then it says it was a part of formerly French Indonesia. And then it was divided up into North and South Vietnam during the Vietnam War.
Yeah. You'll always see that North and South piece when they're talking about, we should always pay attention to that. North and South Egypt, we were fighting, we were at war with one another at one point, and we shouldn't have been doing that. But then our Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, if you have any relatives in the South, get them out as quickly as you can. Well, the South is a capitalism jurisdiction, so to speak, too. And when I say the South, I'm not talking about Alabama, Tennessee, Mississippi, and all. I'm not talking about that South. I'm not even talking about South America. We're talking about, on paper, those that are South are capitalized and don't know that they're not in charge of their person, and that they have a person that they can create and be in charge of their person. Get them out of the South means get them out of that fake system and bring them to the Northwest, Amexum, which is we're in charge of the capitalism. Yes, Empress Shasha, teach, Empress. She said when something goes south, that means things have gone wrong. Yes. And again, we're not... Yes, Islam. Empress Chatali said, she put Psalms 83, verse 4. It says, they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. It's all about names. That's a capitalism verse right there. So that it's so that all that we're doing is so that we always remember that our names, those all cap servants that we have, belong to us. We need to remember that we have names that we control. In other words, it's like having a servant, okay? And you are the savior and fiduciary to your servant. Again, that whole Vietnam War, if you look at the words that they used, all of the words are French. I want to call your attention, speaking of words, to a word that I found this week specifically in my study. I was looking in a Hebrew Bible, a Hebrew English Bible, where they do the translations. And I came across the word Misra. Misra. Misra means empire or government. Okay, Misra. And so I took this, this is Misra right here. I took this and put it at the top of our document just because I found it to be what it should be. But whenever someone used to call us Miss this and Miss that, Misra is actually what that was originally supposed to be in all lowercase letters. And Misra, just like our sons say Amin Ra, the Min Ra. We are Misra, empire, government. The womb is the government. That's where the government comes from. That's where it's always been. Misra. So that is a word for the missus. And whenever whenever the foreigners in their movies would say the missus is the boss, happy wife, happy life, and all of that, that's what they're referring to. Misra. So if someone says miss to you, correct them and say, no, it's actually Misra. So I am happy to be Misra Bay, Misra Richie, etc. Because that's where that comes from. That's the original myth. With that,
Islam. I'm sorry. I don't know, but when you said Misra Bay, I don't know, the hypothecated version came to my mind was miserable.
Yeah. When they put their words together and change the meaning of it and misspell it, because that's what they've been doing, misspelling everything, then it's going to say just the opposite of what it really is.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the whole hypothecation piece, where people did not realize that the hypothecation and usurpation was taking place. They were acting all of that out right in front of us. And on a piece of paper, especially when you're talking about foreigners, if a foreigner spells something a little differently, people tend to overlook it, don't they? So when people overlooked the misspellings, they said, okay, good, we slipped that one through. Now let's hypothecate and subrogate again, and see if we can get these documents passed through and get them to agree to them. That's how persons get misplaced. Is we're letting foreigners write the documents when we never were supposed to do that. We're always supposed to write our own documents. Islam, Empress.
What you're talking about, Misra, which I just love it. Here in Shamaka territory, what's interesting is the Moors sleeping Moors. Obviously, I'll just stop there. But the term myth is reserved for the foreigners. It don't matter who they are, as long as they could be younger than them, they could be. It don't matter. As long as they come foreign, and I like to say you can't stand in the sun at noon without shade, okay? They come and our people absolutely bow, and immediately they are given this title of respect and honor and empire. I always, I found it, and still do, it's offensive to me, because you're watching it happen. But here you are explaining exactly what's going on, and the hypothecation is just, it's so in our face.
Yeah.
I mean, I was asleep too.
Yeah.
And then one more thing, if I might add into the Vietnam and the words.
Yes.
And France and French, there's a nursery rhyme. Alouette, gentil.
Alouette, gentil plumerai. Yes.
Anyway, I could go on because I love to sing. But anyway, they're talking about a bird which is a lark, which is a bird that is joyful and bright and heralds the daylight, the sun rising. Yes. And this song is about plucking its feathers. That's what it's saying. Plucking the feathers and, the head and the beak, and literally decapitating and taking apart. And, the feathers.
Yeah.
It's all about us. Most nursery rhymes have a very negative truth.
Yes. Yes.
With the whole Vietnam and breaking that down, you just brought that song in. I had gone to Burkina Faso. That was 2019, actually.
Yes.
Of course, French is one of the languages. And one evening, I don't know, but this song just came, and I could not stop singing it. And so this is, I looked it up since, trying to sort of understand what's going on. But you've just popped the other piece into wow.
Yes.
I yield now. Islam, thank you.
Yes. I was actually taking a moment and listening to what you were saying, and I just looked up the word lark.
Okay.
Because of what type of bird it was. And it's a bird that has a loud voice, and they fly up really high, and they sing clearly.
And beautifully. But listen, when you just said that, when people are making, in England, to play a joke or, oh, it's just having a lark.
Yes.
So there's that flip.
Yes, I've heard that.
The making fun to the song and taking this beautiful, powerful thing and turning it into a joke, but the joke's on us, but we didn't know it. I mean, and that's what has, well, even with Vietnam, everything, the words, the name, the label.
Yes. Yes.
Appellation is actually, you know, appel is your name in
yes.
Appel
Yes.
call. How are you called?
Yes, in the French that I took in high school, we would say je m'appelle Pauline, je m'appelle, yes.
Comment t'appelles-tu? You know, what are you? How are you called? And
yes,
right there. And appel, I mean, it's in there. Words, technology, they just make me sing.
yeah, yeah.
It's right there in front of us, isn't it?
Appel, yes. The name of God.
Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful, beautiful. See, language is always, knowing the different languages and all that, it's always going to be the key.
It is.
It's always going to be a key. Because this is the year of our voice, of the voice, this year. And this millennia, actually. Because the whole earth actually gets to hear the heirs on the record, speaking the law, and that's something they hadn't heard in centuries.
I watched one of your videos from a while. You used the term. No, yes, it was language. Somebody said about in the fiduciary document adding languages, and you said you used the term land gauge.
Yes.
There it is.
Yes, because that's what they used to navigate.
That's it.
The people of the land.
The people of the land, and then they used ones who spoke the language of the people, the patois, which is the language in Jamaica that everyone's fighting over, but it really literally means the language of the folk, the language of the people. Patois.
And see, if it depending on how you separate that word, it could also mean father water or father admiralty law. Patois. Patois.
Yes.
Because in Islam we have a fatwa. A fatwa.
Every time I hear fatwa, I hear patois.
Yes.
They're the same thing.
That's us putting out the law in a very strong manner.
There.
Fatwa. And the word that we still have to bring forth is matwa.
Matwa, and that one, that's the ma.
That's us. That's the matriarch putting forth the law. Matwa.
Matwa.
Mhm. Yep.
Wow, powerful, powerful.
Yes, yes, yes. Empress, I'm so glad you know languages. Oh, it's exciting.
A little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I have a little French, a little Italian, a little. I sing opera as well. So I've had to learn some languages, but I also had to study French at school.
Yes.
A little German. I didn't care for it. I've been studying the Kikongo, which is very French.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
French came from it, but it's and I have a little Italian, French, Spanish, Kikongo, and I can count to 5 in Hindu.
Yes.
So yeah, I love it. I mean that's the the minestrone.
Yes. Yes.
And that's the root of it all, isn't it? English is actually the
yes, it is.
bottom language.
Yes.
And I would actually teach that before I knew any of this about patois being before English, because there's a big argument here. You're dunce if you speak patois and if you don't speak English properly. And I would try to get across that English is actually made up. It's not, it's made
commercial English. See, the whole earth was supposed to know English. That's what we told everyone. We said, teach everyone on earth English so that at least we have one commercial language in common.
That's right, the commercial language.
It's a commercial language. Corporate English.
Other languages so that everybody could have a resonance and frequency of their own within there. That would help with understanding and the communication.
Well, there are over 200 dialects of English.
All right, there you go. Go to England. Go to London.
So yes, so that the frequency is manifested in each one. They have something called, quote unquote, the Queen's English that has a different frequency than
from the BBC, or if you were born in the sound of Bow Bell or one of the other bells, the Cockney languages. And if you go up to Yorkshire, if you go down to Cornwall, I mean, if you just go across to a different...
They have different frequencies.
Got a different accent.
Yes.
And it, you know, so it's all vibration. It's music. It really is.
Yes. Oh wow. Empress Rama. She put something in the chat. It says, in patois, you can spell the words any way and the meaning is known. E.g., you can spell little can be spelled L-I-K-K-L-E or L-I-K-L-E. You know, that, and in reality, that is the same, those rules apply for Latin as well.
Exactly, yes. In fact, when I write, many times I write, some is standard English or commercial English, and then I'll put in patois because that's the vibe that is coming through me at that time. And
well, it raises the frequency, Empress, of the commercial English.
And it does. It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And that's why every now and then, I'll use the quote-unquote common English or corporate English or commercial English, but then I'll always spell the word and, I'll spell it A-N-D-E.
I noticed that. I noticed that in the documents that I'm, catching up on, and I noticed that, and I realize it's an intentional thing.
Yes, it is absolutely intentional, and it messes with the frequency and the programming for some. Some people had to actually stop listening to what we were saying because whenever they saw the documents, it threw that programming way off.
I'm gonna tell you because I was all on it. I mean, because I made up language anyway as a child, and I was starting doing the documents, and I write, and I had to actually step out for a little bit for my own self because I hear it in my head first, but there was a little dissonance for my own self.
Yes.
For a moment there, and I'm totally on the ancient English because I know it's I know where it comes from and everything else. But and then
it comes from within each one of us. So however you want to spell the words when you're using ancient English, you spell them the way you feel led to spell them. And because it's coming from the creative side that's been asleep, it's going to be fresh, it's going to be pure, and it's gonna manifest your intention. And the law is all about intention.
And that I absolutely agree, because once I allowed myself to let it just flow, and that comes with also the study and getting a little more, I was able to allow myself to do it my way, even though it's the same. You get what I'm saying? And so I have to put my own self in that little bit of the journey of this exercise, this learning, this being, this.
Everyone should put their own selves into ancient English. Whenever they're writing, spell it the way you feel led to spell it. Spell it the way it comes from your heart. Spell it the way it comes from your mind, because when we do that, we're actually tapping into an ancient language root that's within us. And I know just by the way I spell my ancient English words naturally, because I just let nature take its course when I'm writing in ancient English. And when I do that, everything, the majority of the words come out as French words. So I already know that French was what my ancestors spoke.
I feel that was mine too. I remember when I was secondary school and my first French lesson. And
Yeah.
I remember the teacher, you know how they'll say, écoutez et répétez. So
Yes. Yes.
And I remember when it came my turn, and she stopped. She was writing on the blackboard, and she stopped. And she turned to me, and she said, Sharon, you have an affinity for this language.
Mm.
I mean, I can have that memory. Of course, you know, I didn't get deeply into it, but I love French, and I do. But
Yeah.
it's like now with this knowledge and all of this, and I do know, and just even with the touching of the Kikongo, it's in my being. And when I was in Burkina Faso, people would tell me I am them. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yes, I sure do. Yes.
And when I was there, it was as if I had literally just crossed the road from my yard to there. The ground, I have a mud building which I built, you know, and everything about it was just the trees in the community, and it's the same place.
Yes, yes.
So I yield.
Yeah. You know, we used to say écriviez et écoutez, which is
that's just the vous as opposed to two. The
yes.
plural as opposed to singular. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, I love it.
I do too. I'm really excited to make that connection again, especially with the languages, because it's been a while since I was able to have those types of conversations about the language and things like that.
But, I mean, other than my trip there and a few little trips, I mean, school was a while ago now.
Yeah. But you know what? It's all coming back. Even when I'm reading things in Latin, or I'm reading things in French or Spanish or Italian or whatever, it makes complete sense to me. It just makes complete sense to me. There's nothing I can look at now and not get the gist of it and know some of what it's saying,
which is
if not all.
I agree. It's in the blood. It's in the breath. It's in
Yes, yes. And another language, those who are Native American, they are actually speaking ancient Hebrew. That's another something. Because
I studied with Kikongo. I have documents where they're making that, I mean, showing those connections.
And some Arabic. And some Arabic sounds just like quote unquote Native Americans speaking. You know, they would say things like le haole wale kuwata illa billah, which most who study Islam as a religion is instead of it being the law like it is for us. They say that they use that terminology, and that sounds just like Native Americans saying the same thing.
You know, it's interesting because my mother, growing up, my mother always said she's a Jew. Okay?
Yes.
But they never shared anything with us. In fact, my mother's, I've lost my mind right now. But anyway, that's another thing. But she would say she spoke another language, not Patois.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just Patois. I mean, of course, she spoke Patois. But there was another language, another dialect that she spoke.
Yeah.
And, one of the things, and I only remember this one, Uklampa Imi. This was one of the things that she said, which means look at me, actually.
Yes.
Imi. Never shared what it was, but I know in all of this learning now and this, it's all, she was a more, I knew it. I mean, they lived that.
Yes.
The people used to make fun of how they dressed, all of those things. But going to England and you go and you assimilate and elevate is considered. But it's in the blood and it's there. And she speaks about it in like secret, but she's really expressed. The truth is coming out. She would always talk about Mississippi but not tell us anything. And for me now, with this learning and knowledge, I'm realizing she was dropping stones, or her spirit
Yes.
for. You know, she
Yes.
couldn't put it out herself, but
Yes.
she was dropping stones for us because this time was going to come.
Yes. My mother did the same thing, dropping hints, dropping clues, and she wasn't even sure of some of the things but she knew what she was saying was correct. She just couldn't put it all together because, again, bump on the head
You know, they
thing
were
for all of for our.
My mother always used to say, and this, don't ever fill out black on a form.
Wow.
This was in England. I mean, I don't even recall them
Wow.
asking. But then when I went to America and I was there for a long, you had no options necessarily, at least at that time, in my time where I was, because I was asleep. But
yes,
were all clues.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it's a powerful, wonderful time to be here.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm excited for us, Empress, because even through the testing, they say the cream rises to the top.
To the top.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. Islam.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Empress. Thank you. We wanted to the next topic that we want to cover. I want to say something really quickly about the Marshal Service, the United States Marshal Service, and the Office of the United States Marshal. I'll say something quickly, and then because we're going to tie this into the whole cities piece. We have to talk about the cities today. Empress Shatali, are you okay with presenting a few things today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm okay with it.
Okay, good. So let me read through this United States Marshal piece really quickly, because this is one of the ways that liquidation is going to be taking place over the next few months, months, and until everything is returned into the hands physically of the heirs. This U.S. Marshals regarding lawful liquidation and tribute of resources on the land. Article 3, Section 1 of our Constitution states, and again, we're not under a Constitution, we are aligned with the Constitution, and then when we say our Constitution, is the one that we put on the subjects and make sure that everything is being done properly. And on the offices, anyone who's in the offices must follow the Constitution. Not follow it because we're in those offices. We're aligned with it, though. Okay. Our Constitution states the law to ordain and establish a court structure for our ancient courts in alignment with our national government. Okay, because there was a corporate government and it wasn't really a government. It wasn't a government. It was a corporation. There's no such thing as a corporate government. But there was a corporation pretending to be government, and then there's the national government, which is us. Senate Bill number 1 of the first session of the first Congress became the Judiciary Law of September 24, 1789. The law provided a charter for the federal judicial system by specifying the jurisdiction and powers of the district and circuit courts and the qualifications and authority for federal judges, district attorneys, court clerks, U.S. Marshals, and deputy marshals. Now, let me stop here for just a moment and say that our courts they are properly chartered, because people talk about charters a lot. The charters are already on the public record for our courts. Okay, and those charters, if you want to know what the charter says, go and read the Judiciary Law. And you may find it as the Judiciary Act of September 21st, 1789. For us, it's the Judiciary Law of September 21st, 1789. The role of the federal marshal was clearly modeled on the county sheriff. So the qualifications and authority for U.S. Marshals and deputy marshals and court clerks and district attorneys and federal judges, all of which are actually the Moors and not foreigners, those roles were clearly placed in the judiciary law of September 24th, 1789, and the one that we're specifically referring to at this time is the role of the federal marshal. The sheriff, okay, so the role of federal marshal was modeled on the county sheriff. The sheriff became the ranking police and financial officer of the county. And that's why sheriffs had to do things that had to do with property, because property is a financial matter. And he served warrants and made arrests. He collected taxes. And this is something, because the word sheriff, and we pointed this out previously, if you look in the Biblioheliotheque, the word sheriff is in there. I believe it's in Judges, the book of Judges, where it talks about how, I believe it was King Nebuchadnezzar called everyone together, and in the list of people that he called together, a sheriff is listed there. Okay. And don't quote me on the king. I'll have to go back and look and see, but you can Google sheriff in the Bible, and it will point you straight to where the king called all of these different people together, these different offices together, because he wanted to dedicate a statue. Okay. But it says the sheriff collected taxes, collected the minister's dues. So he was also working for the Vatican. The king's or proprietor's quit rents, and that's where the word quit rent came from, except they put quit rents together instead of it being two separate words. And fees owed the governor, secretary, or clerk of the court. The sheriff got 10% of all he took in. In Virginia, from 1619, when the colony was founded, until about 1634, local sheriffs were actually called provost marshal or marshals. So in reality, they were called marshals before they were called sheriffs. Okay, the provost marshal is a military position. And that's why we talk about provost marshal. And when you're talking about a provost marshal, you're talking about a sheriff. When you're talking about a sheriff, you're talking about a U.S. marshal or a federal marshal, either one. When you say U.S. marshal, and let's make this distinction on the public record, a U.S. marshal, when we speak about a United States marshal, we're talking about us. We're not talking about any foreigners, because foreigners don't have the authority to be a marshal on our land. We're talking about the living United States, not the dead one, not the dead corpse, but the states united has federal marshals. And that's the same way as we have Sharifi and peace officers. All of those different names, it's kind of like the movement on the timeline. At different points in time, we called ourselves different, by different. We said we are these people or that people. We're Israelite people. We're Moors. We're Romans. We're, we called ourselves Al-Moroccans. We called ourselves many different things depending on the timeline. And the same thing happened with these offices. The names of the offices or the appellations of the offices changed, but the duties remained the same, collecting the money. The duties remained the same. It was all about the money with these offices. And that's another reason why we had to have our own money system, because we cannot be ourselves and be collecting foreign fiat. So you can read up some more on where this information came from. I will put this in the chat, the link to this in the chat where I got this information from, because it appears to me, and I know that this is true, that those who who were previously the custodians in the Office of the United States, they're all updating their websites to give the information that we need. And not that we need, but that we will use, that we utilize, and that we clean up and make it uncorrupt information. And so, because we know that bankrupt folks cannot, they don't really have anything that they're doing right now. They're bankrupt. So we just look at what has been previously done, just like our prophet said, and they're teaching us how to govern. We're really just remembering how to do it. So Empress Vizier Justice Chitali and the property possession by the city, she's gonna talk a little bit about that. And I just want to make a note that the city has always been the entity that conveyed basic utilities: water, gas, electric, trash, garbage services, basic home phone service for the people. The city was always in control of that. It was always city lights and city water. And if you listen to some of the older songs, they talk about city lights and city water. Some of the older rappers from the 70s and 80s talking about how the city turned off their lights and turned off their water, so they had to do this and this and this and that. So we're going back to that. And the city, again, is the Moors. We're the city. There's no one else that can issue water, electric, gas, and all of that. Cities are responsible for ensuring that mosques and temples can be built on the land as well. And Rome was a great example of what a city can do, particularly a sovereign city. So when you hear people talking about Rome as a city, really the whole earth was basically governed from Rome. Just like with corporate Rome, basically. Okay? Corporate Rome did a good job of acting that out. I was looking at, what cities do and things like that because, as you know, we've been looking to see how can we get our temples built, because we need Moorish holy temples for science. And again, that is different from the Moorish Science Temple of America Incorporated 501c3. They're not the same. We're talking about the Moorish Holy Temple for Science, where it's a public place where the children can come to learn, where the law and the courts are, where people can come and have their needs met, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? That's what the temples were really for. And that was actually supposed to be where the city was run from. And that really hasn't changed. If you look at the buildings that, where the capitals are, those are called capital cities. Olympia, Washington is called a capital city. Okay, and all of those places they were housed in temples. So that's why the buildings have the big domes and the Corinthian columns and all of that. Those are our buildings. Those are ours, and that is where cities govern from. So I was doing a little research, and I came across something where there was an Islamic society that they call themselves a society, and I'm assuming, and again, I don't know for sure because I'm not really familiar with any of these organizations. It's just something that I saw where I got a little bit of information from it. There is an Islamic society that wanted to build a mosque in a city or a township in New Jersey, and the city voted down their application to build. So what that told me is that we can always use the city that we govern to build what we need to build, to access what we need to access, because that's really what it is. It's a conveyance method by which the estate is accessed. Cities, states, municipalities, all of that is just ancient, not the corporate ones, but the ancient ones, whereby we can get a whole bunch of things done. We can get a lot done. And that's why we said a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, to start paying attention, and we don't attend their city, quote unquote, city council meetings. We just look at them online and see how things are done, knowing that it is a court. That's a court action. And the one that was previously, the custodian previously doing business as mayors, they're all actually judges and justices, or that position, that office is the office for a judge or a justice, which we know the Moors are the only justices and judges on the land. Everyone else was only practicing. So with this, they had other entities who signed a quote-unquote friend of the court brief indicating support for the group's right to build a mosque. So again, the city is how a friend of the court brief is telling you that cities are courts, okay? And so we need to know that the city is, we're going to use that conveyance method as we govern the cities. We're not waiting for anyone else to do that. We're doing it already. And that is how we're going to access and get the things that we need in order to get our, the temples built, the mosques built that we need in order to put forth the erudition and to have where we have our courts and where the people can be fed and the people can get what they need in order to live and maintain and all of that, because there are still Moors who need domiciles and food and conveyances and all of that. And to those Moors, we send our highest honor to you, and we appreciate and thank you for standing in all the work that we're doing. We're doing it for you. So with that being said, Empress Shatali, I'll go ahead and yield the floor if you want to give some information about the property piece and anything that you may have found out about that. Islam, I yield.
Islam. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share this. You do such amazing work, and I appreciate you giving me the floor on this and be able to pass this on to everybody. This document I got, and I can put the link in the chat.
And I'll go ahead, Empress, and give you the, I'll switch presenters so you can, if you want to show the document.
Okay.
Let me just see here. You should be able to present. There it is. Which presenter? Yes.
Okay, I see it.
Okay, good.
Okay, so I got this document in honors to Raquel, and she's always sending me something, and because I could not find the charter for my area, and so she sent me this. And when I went through it, I mean, it showed step by step procedure for acquiring abandoned property and property that's abated, that needs abatement, and things of that nature. So it shows the because I'm going to show the it shows the notices that you give, you know, who does what, I mean, everything. And so I got this from the Library Municipal Code for Alameda County, Codes and Ordinances. And so, is my screen updating every time I click?
Yes, it is. It is.
Because now I'm on the, I'm looking at my Word document where I made some notations. Well, basically, I pretty much left it alone. I mean, seriously, it's really giving step by step, you know, of what to do. It gives you the definitions in the beginning. And
can you scroll? Yeah. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's on.
Yeah. So I put in there, this is an excerpt from Title 6, Health and Safety. This is Chapter 6.65, the unincorporated Alameda County real property nuisance. And so it describes all the nuisance and abatements and what you do.
So this is if properties are abandoned and you can name the property a nuisance or an abatement and then claim it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And of course, this is really the reason why I'm sharing this is because it just shows court procedure when it comes to, you know, claiming property in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this can be, you know, we could use it in any way we see fit. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so all of us, no matter what territory we're at, we can either use these or you can use the ones for your for the city, the codes, look at the codes for your city and see how to claim, because it tells you step by step how to claim the properties, whether they're vacant, abandoned, or whatever it is. It tells you how to go about doing that. We just have to know that we notify the subjects and the former custodians that this is what we're doing. You know. So I yield, Empress. Go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Empress Light. And so it says in the beginning, this chapter is adopted by the County of Alameda to improve the general appearance and cleanliness of real property in unincorporated Alameda County to the general standard, written or unwritten, of the neighborhood in which the property is situated, and to cause the swift abatement of blight. So right now you have all these buildings, businesses, they're boarded up. That's blight. You can't do that on our land. It has to look nice, you know, regardless of the situation. That, you know, and so that's a violation of law to do that. And so this talks about, it starts going into the definition. So I won't go into every definition, but I did put a link in the chat so you can have the document for yourself and look it over. How I came across this document was looking up abatement and nuisance. And something just made me go, the ancestors prompted me to look it up. And so that's how I went straight to this section right here that talks about it. And what I did in the document was, let me see if I can scroll a little bit faster, was everything in red was what I wanted to use as a bullet point. I went through the definitions here, And there's just a few that I wanted to point out, but everything else in the document, I just highlighted it so you can quickly go from step to step throughout the document and then go over reading the details later. So it says the owner means any person or persons owning real property as shown in the last equalized assessment roll for county taxes, or the leasee, tenant, or other person having control or possession of the property. So that stood out to me, that when they're looking at property taxes, they're looking at who owns what. By that means, yeah. So they don't go to the deeds. They see who's on the property taxes, and that's what they're going by. And the planning director means, for the purpose of this chapter, the planning director of Abatement County and any person whom the planning director may authorize, designate, or deputize to act for him or her. Because in the document I see it says enforcement. And so when I looked up the definition, and I unfortunately, I apologize, I don't have it here, but anybody can be the enforcement, so it's not specifically talking about police or sheriff or anybody. But within our government, when we're doing this, anybody's enforcement. So we know we're that anyway, but but it's just for confirmation that, if a sheriff or police pulled up or something like that, this is not their business. This is not their business. It doesn't automatically give them authority to do anything. So, okay, so now here goes the identifying the property as a nuisance. So if it's inadequately maintained, such as property degradation, degraded in any kind of way. It doesn't have to be major. Let me see if I can scroll a little bit faster. So it says any abandoned wreck, dismantled or inoperable vehicle or recreation vehicle or trailer. So anything, if there's abandoned vehicles in front of it, that's still a blight. That's still a blight, and it's regarding the property. So, it's anything that's not looking up to par. Okay, so I'm scroll down. And so all that I'm scrolling past is just giving you definitions and examples of what blight is and what abandonment looks like and things of that nature. And so here we go when we're looking at who is handling the whole beginning to end of notifying the quote-unquote owner of the property, and then the notification that's given and things of that nature. So it says, except as otherwise provided herein, the provisions of this chapter shall be administered and enforced by the planning director. So in my municipal government, the planning director is handling all of this, is overseeing all of this. It says the declaration of public nuisance by enforcement officers. It says procedures for abatement set forth herein shall not be exclusive. So even though it's given a rundown here in this what do you call it, in this outline, for lack of a better word right now, it's not exclusive. There could be other things that you could think of that causing a nuisance, and where you would step in and do the process. It says, so the procedure for abatement set forth herein shall not be exclusive and shall not in any manner limit or restrict the county from enforcing other county ordinances. For example, there's a law called Law of Waste, where it's a waste if it's sitting there. It's a waste if it's been defaced in any kind of way. It's a waste if it's over improved. There could be property out there that's over improved and it's sitting there. Nobody wants to buy it because it's not according to their taste, and they just did too much improvement. So that's a waste. And now it talks about the notification of nuisance. The enforcement officer shall give written notice to the owner, quote unquote, owner of said property. That's the beginning of it. Give notice. And then it says the notice to abate shall be provided in person by prepaid certified mail. A return receipt requested and shall include a copy of this chapter and a statement describing the section found to be violated. If the property is not found to be in compliance with this chapter, full enforcement action shall occur as set forth herein, including fines and or fees, including in the section 6.650220, with a schedule of fines and fees. So notice by prepaid mail is what we do all the time. It says the notice to abate shall include a statement detailing the cost, and such costs incurred and additional fines and or fees, if any, shall be due and payable to the enforcement agency. So that's more part of the notification. And the administrative hearing part, where we do our court action, it says if they fail to neglect or refuse to comply, administrative hearing shall be conducted within the 45 calendar days. So anywhere between 1 day and 45, within that 45 calendar days, we have a hearing. And the notice of hearing shall be served upon the quote-unquote owner unless no less than 7 calendar days. And the notice of hearing shall be provided in person by prepaid certified mail. If it's personally served or deposited in the mail, you do either or. And failure for any person to receive notice shall not affect the validity of any proceedings hereunder. Notice shall be substantially in the format as set forth. So it doesn't matter if it gets to them or not. You put it in the mail, you gave it to them or whatever, the notification is done. And so here's the template right here, where there's an example of, what you put in the template when you're giving notice, what it says, pointing out the nuisance. It's just a simple template. Of course, we don't use this, but it's just showing us just how simple and short and sweet we would write out our notification. And the administrative hearing by Board of Zoning Adjustments. The Board of Zoning Adjustments shall hear and consider all relevant evidence. So this is our time where we're in court and we're discussing the property. The enforcement officer shall prepare findings and prepare an order. And it says, I put trial down here in red because it's saying the order shall include reference to the right to appeal. But I say trial, but, I don't know what we would want to do in that regard, but I would definitely say trial before I say appeal if they want to speak up. And so here's another template that they would use just to follow up. Serving all the quote-unquote owners, and after you make that template, you serve all the owners, and then you put it in a conspicuously posted, or put it somewhere conspicuously posted or near the property. And just notify. The nuisance to be abated by county employees or private contracts. So we as a government, we can employ ourselves to do any updates or, fix on the property whatever way we see fit. And then it says to bill the owner. And it says the enforcement officer or county employees or private contracts are expressly authorized to enter upon the said property for such purposes. So as soon as we do our notifications in the court, we go in. We put our notifications, post things on the door or whatever, and we go in and we get to work. And so here's a list of appeals for the supervisor. For the Board of Supervisors to take a look at if somebody was to appeal. But of course, that wouldn't be the case. So some of this stuff, of course, we would take things out, put things in, so it is speaking from a sovereign standpoint. And so, it says, yes.
May I just clarify just a couple of things? You mentioned something about fees and things like that. Those would be in the form of a lien. We would send them a lien for whatever that fee amount is, and they actually have to pay in lawful money.
Yes. So that's something we can put in there, that language in there, to make sure we are making that distinction.
And then also any appeals, they actually have to appeal to our court, not any other corporate court. There are no other courts involved in these processes. We're notifying everyone, but remember, we have the stamps for the inferior court, so they already know what's going on. And that's the reason why. One of the reasons why we did things that way is so that everyone is aware of what's going on, and that they have to come to our court. They can't just go to any old court. Islam.
And so I guess when we are notifying them, if they didn't come to that meeting that we had, I mean, because it's open, it's open, and they pretty much dead in the water. But it says the Board of Supervisors shall adopt a resolution declaring such property to the public nuisance, setting forth its findings. So the Board of Supervisors will write up a resolution saying the outcome of the judgment. And it says all hearings shall be electronically tape recorded, which we do that all the time with our conference calls.
And might I suggest that at some point we, whenever we're ready to start doing these, the buildings and the properties, we can use this platform to all of us come together, and we will be the Board of Supervisors, and we will be the City Council. So if there's a more who comes on these calls and they want a building or they want a property and they show the process, we're all on board with voting that in to law, and then the more can properly notify and send the video that this has been properly adjudicated, as far as the building is concerned.
Yeah, so that way, due process is complete.
Yes.
And it says abatement by county employees. So again, like we can, we're the government, we can employ ourselves. And it says the abating, the nuisance shall be billed to the owner. And then it says costs, both direct, indirect, including attorney's fees, the costs incurred in documenting the nuisance. As we go, we documented all the costs. The cost to even have to, travel over there and post something on the door with it. All that is a cost.
Yes, and in our case, it would be consul fees as opposed to attorney fees, or you can call yourself a sovereign attorney or a sovereign lawyer, because we do have lawyer on the public record as one of our documents, but we spell it differently. LAWYAH is the sovereign law, Yah, or law gods. So, yeah, those costs can be billed by way of a lien. That's how we speak, by affidavit. Islam.
It says, a notice to intent to demolish, a copy of any order requiring abatement by demolition under the section shall be recorded with the Alameda County Recorder. Because I noticed that in this document, a lot of the recordings are within the municipal office. Not everything is recorded with the Alameda County Recorder. So it stays internal within the office. It's public record, but it's not recorded with the county recorder. So record of cost of abatement. The enforcement officer shall keep an account of the cost, shall render an itemized report in writing to the Board of Supervisors. A copy of the same shall be posted in front of such property, and proof of said posting service shall be made by affidavit. So the assessment lien, and I put a note to myself, so it wasn't, I just wrote this in. It says the cost of abating such a nuisance is confirmed by the Board of Supervisors shall constitute a special assessment against a respective lot or parcel of land to which it relates, and upon recordation of the office of the county recorder of a notice of lien is made and confirmed, shall constitute a lien of said property in the amount of such assessment. So my note itself says that the notice of lien and the itemized cost, that's the lien within itself, without even needing the language that we normally put in the liens.
So this 6.65.210 assessment lien, everything that's in blue there before the red writing, that was actually in the code?
Yes. So
again, they're affirming that liens are the way to do these types of actions. There has to be, and we've been saying this for years now, a lien must be on the public record whenever you're demonstrating anything, especially property. They know that, we know that, and that is why we are where we are right now, because the liens actually do work because they are a part of the process. You can't even get the process done without a lien, because you have because a lien is also a judicial claim where you have corporates trying to claim something that doesn't belong to them. So with that, yes, Islam, I yield.
Yes. So all of this work that's being done and all of the accrued costs, that's a lien right there. And it's recorded. I'll just read on, because it's recorded with the tax assessor. The lien is recorded with the tax assessor so that it can be connected to the property in that way. So it says, after such confirmation and recordation, a certified copy of the board supervisor's decision, the resolution example as mentioned in 6.5130, shall be filed with the Alameda County Auditor Controller, and the Auditor Controller is to add the amounts of the respective assessments to the next regular tax bills, and thereafter said amount shall be collected at the same time and in the same manner as ordinary property taxes are collected. So that's another note to myself. I said if the place is abandoned, and abated by us. I don't know who's going to pay that tax part, but that's something that seems weird that they do.
Well, we're going to note for the record that it's abated by, again, whoever was last listed on the tax filing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and then if that turns out to be any mores, then once they proclaim their status, all they have to do is print up the tax payment and print up the money and give it.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's in their trust. There's $100 million in the trust of every more.
Mm-hmm.
And also, again, we can use this platform to begin governing as Board of Supervisors and City Councils. So my suggestion would be to have, to start picking the buildings and then doing these processes together. And that way, we can start getting the buildings. We've already done the demonstration here. We need to finish the demonstration here with the building down the way. We did evict those that were unlawfully occupying the building, and now we need to do a county, a city, call a city meeting, and have a vote on it. And I'll have to look at the latest posting regarding the building so that we can announce a court action here and notify them that the former custodians in the Office of City of Federal Way that we're going to be adjudicating that here. And that way we can use these as examples too. So when Moors want to start doing more of this, they can do it, and they have examples to follow. Islam.
Yes, thank you, Empress Shatali and Empress Light. This is Empress Rose. So 2 things. So I was looking on Zillow, and I remember looking at Zillow a few years back, and they used to clearly list if a home was foreclosed. But now, they don't list if homes are foreclosed, and so I was playing around with the search tabs and stuff, and I put foreclosed and pre-foreclosed, and the same homes would just pop up. And so a lot of the homes, that are fine, and we don't know if they're fine. They still have to kind of be looked at and stuff like that. But they're just on the street, regular homes. I bet you that a lot of them are foreclosed. And before they used to it was the bank. You would know clearly this is a bank that owns it. But now real estate companies are owning homes. And then I was like, okay, so why? Because I was looking up the different parcel numbers, and some of them still had names attached to them, but yet they were still coming up under the pre-foreclosed section. So I was like, okay, so is this, because I know they probably don't want to advertise foreclosure back in the day or whenever, because they don't want the valuation of the home to go down, or pre-foreclosure. But I was just like, okay, why are they keeping this name attached to it if it might be in pre-foreclosure? So yeah, Zillow, is a little tricky, but it might, you could still find, I think you can find homes that are, regular homes on Zillow, because they're playing with the algorithm and stuff like that, so people don't really know if a bank owns it. And to be honest, with what I've learned lately, you don't even know if the people are real sometimes if they've attached a person to it and stuff like that. So that was one thing I wanted to add. And then the other thing with that you were talking about, Empress Light, regarding our city council meetings, I think that would be a really good thing, because I'm glad I have properly claimed my whole building for my domicile, which is a several unit building. It was previously a rental building, a 4-story rental building. And so I've been just going back and forth in my head because they are still, they had the lien and everything, but they're obviously still doing business, with residents there and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, I know that this is something we're in a transition that is going to change over time and stuff like that, but I think that is something that we'll have to work on with for those that have been able to, that are going to and have successfully gotten their buildings. And then also the other thing I noticed in my territory that's happening is that they're continuing to build a lot of these complexes and stuff like that are brand new, that are nice, yet we have a huge homelessness problem. And so I think one of the things is that we're going to have to come up with what are the new systems of getting people into claiming these new buildings that are built, because I know these are our buildings, right? They're building them for us. And I know that my territory is not the only territory that has the homeless problem, but we have to come up with the new systems to get the Moors and those in need in them and in the domiciles as well, the homes. I yield.
Islam. So
Islam, I'm sorry.
Really quick, let me just address something she said there. The only reason that they continue doing what they're doing is because they go from being a corporation to a former custodian in the office of, and they're actually waiting on us to go ahead and lawfully, peacefully, properly get in that office. So we'll just pick up where they left off in that office, because the office of rental manager and all of that stuff, that belongs to the Moors, the one who owned the building. So someone has to actually govern the building. So that's why they just keep doing bare minimal things to keep the rental and everything going. But at some point, when the time is right, and I know we're close to that because the U.S. Marshal piece is coming into play, where the Moor will say, okay, and this is something that I noticed just in talking to one of the Moors this weekend who did a demonstration at an apartment complex. I noticed that in these demonstrations, the subjects will say things like, this is my office and this is, whatever. All you have to do is turn and say, no, this is actually my office, not yours. And again, we say that, we state it on the record, but then what we need to do is make sure that as time goes by and we know what we're, and when we start to demonstrate the U.S. Marshal piece, that piece gets demonstrated where we say, okay, you're being escorted off the property because this is not your property, this is our property. And I have a real sneaking suspicion, and it's not a sneaking suspicion, it's actually a very public, open one, that after a while they're just going to get up and leave, and they're not going to be there, because that's happening quite a bit in a lot of different industries.
Well, what I noticed, when I had gone into the office, and I noticed that all the Albion's modern Europeans were gone. Yeah. And they had left the Moors there, the sleeping Moors. And so I was like, okay. So, but it's still like for me, I'm like, okay, there's a process to do this, Yes, I definitely will say that this is my office. But I know that there's a process and there's people in the, in those units, and there's a way of notifying them and things like that. So, yeah.
Yes.
Islam.
And resignation letters and things of that nature are going to be utilized there. Resignation letters and things like, and then if necessary, the U.S. Marshal's piece will be used if necessary. And it's not going to be difficult to get the sleeping Moors, if necessary, to say, hey, this is no longer you all's office. This office belongs to us. It's not going to be difficult for that to happen when we're ready. And the ancestors will let each of us know when it's time to start doing that. Right now, they want us to get this part that Empress Chitali is bringing forth. We need to get that part, and then we all need to be doing it together in terms of being the board of supervisors and the city council and all that. We need to get that piece going because that's just more court actions, really. Honestly, that's all it is these are court actions. We're just expanding our court actions to include properties and things like that. Yeah, we're just expanding on what we've been doing already. And that way, it won't be a problem to get into the offices and start working. Islam.
Angel Bay. And there's a few things that Empress Rose just mentioned. And one of them I had spoke to you, Empress Light, concerning domiciles that have been, quote unquote, claimed that was recently for sale. And you had said that they're all squatters, and they are. And then also Rose said that she doesn't know if they're bots on paper or not, who's actually occupying squattingly in these domiciles. And then I thought about our persons. Are all capital names that we've claimed and put it in our sovereign jurisdiction, and so we claim the persons on ourselves. But then when we think about the fiduciary affidavits, and we've claimed all the numbers and letters and in all styles and fonts and letters and fonts and so on and so forth and colors, that means we've also claimed those persons also, whether we lien them or not. So when somebody states that there's somebody living in that domicile, well, we just say court action and we claim that person. And so now they're in our jurisdiction, and well, since they're my person, now I can do as I see fit within reason and lawfully and honorably and all that good stuff. But, you know, they aren't what they claim they are. They're an ipso juris subject, and they have to do as commanded to the law. And another thing, I think I shared with you also, according to Schenectady, there was a land management company, and I recently liened them, and they were responsibly and tasked using resources of different entities, whether it was a bank, you know, the city, and whatever else, to do exactly what we're speaking on as far as finding properties and rehabbing them and this, that, and the third. And now when I saw this back in when I found it, I was like, they're doing our job. So I had no problem leaning it and putting in the sovereign jurisdiction. And now, since we're speaking on this level, I now further know what to do concerning them as far as commanding them to do the business as we need it to be done, and just commanding our ipso juris subjects to continue to do the business of, you know, getting these properties and bringing them up to, you know, code as we see needed.
Yeah.
So, Islam.
Empress Chitali, where did you go?
Islam?
I think everybody got the gist of the whole thing and everything, because the last part was just a notice at the end. It was a notice of lien.
Can we see that?
Yeah. Can you want to give me the screen again? I think
Did you give the screen back? I thought I saw something change, but I was not sure what it was. Let me see. Just a moment. I didn't know you could give it back. And okay, here it is. Just a moment.
Yeah,
I'm particularly interested in what they say about liens, just because we introduced that lien process on a high numbered scale, a high quantity scale, back in 2018, 2019 time frame. So
okay.
yeah.
Well, this is the last part. It's a template, and it's a notice of lien. And like they said in the outline, was that a notice of lien and the itemized cost together sent to the controller as a lien within itself. And so this is a template, and it says, pursuant to the authority vested in us by the provisions and sanctions of, Alameda County Ordinance, the Board of Zoning Adjustments of the County of Alameda did on or about the day of cost of property hereinafter described to be rehabilitated, or the building or structure on the property hereafter described to be repaired, removed, or demolished in order to abate a public nuisance in said realty property. And the Board of Supervisors of the County of Alameda did on the day of assess the cost of such rehabilitation, repair, removal, or demolition and removal upon the property hereafter described, and the same has not been paid, nor any part thereof, and that said County of Alameda does hereby claim a lien on such rehabilitation, repair, removal, or demolition, and removal of in the amount of said assessment, to wit, the sum of assess the cost of such rehabilitation, repair, removal, or demolition, or removal upon the real property hereinafter described, and the same has not been paid, nor any part thereof, and that said County of Alameda does hereby claim a lien on such rehabilitation, repair, removal, or demolition, and removal in the amount of said assessment, to wit, the sum of, and the same shall be liened upon said real property until the same has been paid in full and discharge of recorder. The real property herein above mentioned upon which a lien is claimed, is that certain parcel of land lying and being in the County of Alameda, State of California, and particularly described as follows. And so you put the description there and the date, and put our sovereign title here, Board of Supervisors, and that's it. That's the notice. That's the notice of lien. Just simply saying something simple, and then here's the fees at the end, but it's not an exhausted fee. But this is just a schedule of fees and fines associating with making this all possible. Yeah.
While you were speaking, I was looking up the word abate.
Okay.
Because of the word, that is bait is the root word, but it made me think about probate. It also made me think about debate. And when I looked up the word bait, it's really about controversy or a discussion, a discussion about something. And that word actually expresses why we have to use courts to do abatements, basically, to govern abatements, because it's kind of like a debate about the building,
Yeah.
But abate is more like abandonment of the building. That means they've abandoned the discussion about the building.
Yeah. There's a sleeping moor that I would see in front of the store, at a grocery store, and we talked. And so he's been in the area for over 50 years. He knows where all the abandoned properties are at. He told me about one that has 10 units. It's completely furnished with washer and dryer and everything. It's been sitting there for 5 years. And so
waiting on the moors.
And so I just laughed, and I was like, oh, well, it sounds like that's the one for us because, you know, it has everything. But, yeah, all these, I mean, that falls under the category. Something that's abandoned and, you know.
Well, you know, there's enough properties to where we don't have to put anybody out of anything. We can actually show competence with what's already presently on the, you know, out there that doesn't have anyone in it.
And there are plenty.
Yes, and then remember when this past weekend, our Grand Sheik and Empress Dr. G and some of the other Moors, how Dr. G said for people to come and help fix the place up and do some things like that. And people came and helped and fixed things up. I think that that's a good way to do it, but we could still itemize the cost and bill the owner. And if the owner is the city will go ahead and pay for that. See, so we're still getting paid one way or the other for the work that's being done.
Yes. Really paid.
Yes.
Not fiat.
Yes, not fiat, like real money. And that's another reason why we have to do what we're doing now, is because all of that other stuff is not even working anymore. And that's why you're seeing so much blight, abandonment, abatement-looking buildings and things like that. It's because the city is supposed to be taking care of that, but the dead cities don't have anything. It's the living cities that are manifesting right now.
Islam. And Prishatali, you said you mentioned you put the link of where you got the information. I haven't seen it come up in the chat.
Let me look.
And also, while you're looking for that, right here, down here on the screen, Empress, it says enforcement officer means the planning director of Alameda County and any person whom the planning director may authorize, designate, or deputize to act for her or him.
Yeah, I knew I saw that somewhere.
Right down there at the bottom.
Yes. Yeah, so, hey, that's anybody. That's anybody.
Well, they keep saying the word person, and that's why taking back having our own person is so important.
Yeah.
When they say person, they actually really mean person, like the all caps or the in capitis diminutio minima, and it has to be a state person, a person who is properly stated. We can't do this trying to be in their system. We actually have to have our own system to even do this. And we have to be in complete control of our person. And that's why, Moors, as we're going through these processes, we have already shown how to protect your person. We would encourage all Moors to protect your person before you do any other demonstrations. Protect your person. What does that look like? We showed you about a month ago how we protected our person, where we put these documents on the public record, and we'll talk about that in a little while. I'll go back over those documents really quickly on how I protected my person, so that as we go about doing these things, corpses cannot take it, can't claim that we're their person and that they can take and arrest anybody, because you actually have to agree to be their person for them to put their hands on you. And if you're not their person, they can't put their hands on you. But you have to know what that looks like. And then you have to do the process of protecting your person. Because, yes, we knew all along that we were not their all caps. But it wasn't until we actually did the process to protect our person that our person is protected. Islam, Empress Shatali, I yield.
Islam. And that's the end of the document.
Empress Shatali, can you scroll down just a little bit so we can see the rest of that chart? Up a little bit, rather. I'm sorry. Up so we can see the chart. Yes. Now, stop right there. You see all of these fee schedules and things like this. These things are the things that the city governs. It says right here, trash and recycling containers, parking limitations, garage sales, vehicle repairs, all of that stuff. The city is actually supposed to be taking care of that where we're concerned. You know, when we're going around doing things on our land, the city is supposed to be reimbursing us for the mileage and all of that stuff that we're doing, you know. For delivery of documents and all of that stuff, the city is supposed to be, because we're doing city business when we're doing that. Yeah. You know, so all of that stuff that I did, you know, and even the POW demonstration, that's why $100 million was appropriate. And the Article 3 courts gave us $100 million in our favor, where the quote-unquote corporate city of Federal Way was concerned, because we weren't supposed to be there, and we proved that that we're not their person. We proved that, you know. So protect your person, Morris, please.
You can see here where it says trash and recycling containers, like they have all these companies that look like they're independent of the city, but that could be independent of the city if there is a fine from the city about your trash.
Yeah.
So they're full of it.
Yes.
Those companies are government.
Yeah. That's so true. That tells you there, and corporations cannot govern. Mm-hmm. They can't. So, wow. And then we are actually supposed to be, you know, more as we've been talking about, people have to pay us taxes and all this. This is where that comes in at. We're the city, and if something is going on that shouldn't be going on, then a fine is levied. And we levy by way of lien. And we can, again, the system that's already in place, we can use it. We just have to use it knowing who we are and making sure that we stamp and seal things according to our own sovereign status as a sovereign city and a sovereign state and a sovereign government, etc., because we're all of those. I remember when I did the first POW demonstration, they sent their corps two warrants back in 2018, and on the warrants it said State of Washington and City of Federal Way versus Richie, Pauline, or something like that. And again, that was their person, that wasn't me. But it just goes to show you that they were using the state and the city together at the same time to levy fines and things like that, so that they each could get a part of that. You know, no one had done anything to the state of Washington, quote unquote, you know, but they were that showed up on the documentation, you know. So there's connections that we thought they were separate. We thought waste management was separate from the city. But waste management, which is the garbage collectors, they're not. All they did really was tell the city, look, we're going to do this, and you all are going to pay for anything that need to be paid for. And so the city would fine somebody for having their trash can out too long, you know, too many days after garbage collection or whatever. And then even the homeowners association started getting in on that piece and saying that they're going to fine people for having trash cans out too long or having it too far out, you know, away from the domicile or whatever, you know. So all the corporations just kind of took their liberties with the persons, and they started using persons and creating persons, you know, and saying, you owe this and you owe that. Well, that's your person and that's your bill. It ain't got nothing to do with me. My person is right here on this paper that I crafted. So who is that? even though they look the same. So are there any other comments or questions? Let's give Empress Chitali a huge Islam. Thank you so much for this, Empress Chitali, because this is key and important. Islam indeed.
Thank you. I'm really nervous.
Thank you, Empress Chitali. Islam.
Islam.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Should I stop sharing the screen then? Should I hand the screen back over to you, Empress Light?
It can stay on your document in case anybody has any other questions.
Oh, okay.
We still need the link, though, I think, Empress, for the site.
Let me see.
Islam.
The link to the site, Empress?
Yeah.
To the Abatement.
I didn't hit enter yet. That's what happened. There it is.
Thank you.
All right, I want to put some information out. First of all, thank you for leaving the call open, because I woke up late and I said, "Oh my goodness, it's 6:30," and I was still able to get in. So thank you. Because my sister didn't call, didn't text me entirely. Anyway,
Islam.
On what I found out I did wrong. Well, I probably didn't do it wrong, but I had liened the whole building. But I had to actually go back and lien every individual apartment, because every individual apartment is a contract that the tenants have with the fake landlord. So even though we liened the building, each one of those apartments was a contract by itself. So once I did that, I liened all the apartments, and I liened the bank account, because I got hold of the bank account of the fake landlord. So now they couldn't collect any rent. So what the tenants were doing, the guy would come by and collect the fiat, and they would put it in his hand to get the rent money. Because I blocked him from using for them to send a check or the money or to his bank account.
Yes, when you file the liens, and that's actually something that people were saying in the beginning. They were saying that people were still doing business even though a lien was done. Once you just got to give that lien about, in some cases 30, 60, or 90 days, and you can stop them from doing business completely. And actually, that's going as of October 1st or September 30th. That's going, all of that's going to kick in anyway.
Yeah, that's what Brother Todd said on Friday's call.
That's what
he sure did. Islam.
That has everything to do with liens that the Moors have been doing, saying stop the business, stop it, because we are the ones governing and not you all. And as the former custodian previously doing business as Pope Francis, said the same thing. He's telling them churches now. So y'all, those who attend the churches, if you start seeing some things look a little bit different, you'll know why.
Islam. Did y'all hear the ipso jure subject, formerly known as president, how he was pleading for democracy in his last address to the corporate? He was saying, we need the democracy, vote democracy. And I'm just like laughing hysterically, like, whatever.
We're our focus is not even them. Our focus is us and our nation and the growing and expansion and rising of our nation. We're not even trying to tear down their quote-unquote democracy, because that, the more we are ourselves, anything that's not real is going away anyway. So
Islam. Yeah, I saw it from the perspective of he's begging and pleading for the life of what he knows. That's how I saw it. And though it wasn't the true, it was another clone. It was it was an act. It was theatrical. It was on the stage of, fictitious, and but all in all, it was like I saw it as, he wants to give like his last plead as he was, exiting stage left, as it were.
Islam.
Islam,
nobility.
Just want to rewind to what you showed about Vietnam.
Yes.
I've got a recording somewhere in my archives with the same thing to do with the World War I and World War II was literally theatrical, where some of the tanks were pumped up like balloons. And I'll try and find that video and post it next time around. But all the wars they've told us about was staged acting.
Yes. Yep. And in the military, they even call it theater.
Islam, I just want to add, thank you, Nobility and Empress. When you came out with the Vietnam, I was like, oh my God, we on the same wavelength, because I was reading on Facebook, just scrolling, and then there's this Haitian genealogy group that I follow, and the guy was distraught in the group because he said he was doing his genealogy research, and he found out that he had ancestry from Louisiana, but he said the timelines are messed up. He said that the slavery never ended in when it said it ended for Haiti, that he was saying in 1804. He said that his genealogy came from this castle in Louisiana, and then that his ancestors were taken as slaves to Haiti and then married a noble. Now I know, like, I'm still, and he married and then married a World War II officer. That's what he said. And I was like, okay, I know there's some lies in that, because I'm trying to figure this out. But when he said they married a World War II officer, I was like, okay, so what was World War II about? And like something came to me, like World War I and World War II was all about the Moors. Like, my spirit told me. And then I was like, there was something always about that song by New Edition, Can You Stand the Rain?
Mm-hmm.
And in the music video, the guy is like, I was like, what? This song is like, I love the song, but at the same time I don't like it, because I'm like, why would I say I want to put up with but, and I remember there was a part in the last part of the music video where the guy is, he goes and he sits in front of the TV, and I know that he was, in my spirit, had always told me that he was saying, okay, I'm going to sit in front of this TV and be programmed. Are you ready for my fall? Basically, that's how I always saw it. And I was like, well, I wonder when that song came out, and it was 1936, like right when, right, like in the middle after World War I, and when they were going to, and then World War II happened after that happened, but the TV was introduced right around that time too. I can't remember which date. And I was like, okay, so that's really what has been happening, is that the media has been one of the main methods of our fall in brainwashing and things like that. So I'm glad you brought that up. And then that also was confirmed, because there's another show that I watched back in the day, not too far ago, American Gods.
Yeah.
And so you have Yup. And so you have the Queen of Sheba, and she comes into, a Maxim and everything, and she's dancing and stuff like that. And but then at some point she, becomes homeless, and it shows that while she's homeless, she's watching the TV screen where they're saying they're bombing ISIS. And then the computer guy later on comes to her when she needs help and says, they bombed your home. And like, okay, yeah. That it's like just basically telling us, like, yeah, they've been using the TV and stuff like that to basically use our power, our God power of manifestation. So they've been getting like the okay from the TV by using our God power of manifestation, and then
enacting this and getting the energies to lower based on the belief, because our brains don't know the difference, and we didn't know that. Like, we fell from this knowledge, and so then we'll like okay it in our brains, and it's real in our brains, and once it's real in our brains, it becomes real in our reality. So, man, yeah. So thank you. That was good, because I was like, oh my gosh, I was just doing that research.
Yeah, Islam. It took a lot of effort on the part of all the subjects all over the earth in order to program us just for a little while. Think about the amount of effort. Everything they did was to program us. That's a lot of effort, a lot of energy. And here we are, awake. It's kind of like putting all your energy in trying to get your child to go to sleep. And you get them to go to sleep, and as soon as you turn around and you look back, they're sitting up again. we're up already, except we're not children. We're we're of age and mature heirs. Yeah. So, oh, that's good, Empress Shasha. Media or Medea is a descendant of the sun god. So here again, the word is used to deceive. Yes, it is. And then media. Think about that word, and then think about in capitis diminutio media, because that's actually one of the in capitis diminutio minima, in capitis diminutio media, and in capitis diminutio maxima. Yes, dia is Dios also, and Dios is God. So, wow, beautiful, beautiful. That is actually the root word, not the root word, but the prefix for the word diaphragm, which is a part of the body that it's actually the breath chakra, which is above the or below the heart chakra. The breath, it's a breathing mechanism. Yes, the diaphragm.
Islam, breath is spirit.
Yes.
Connection to everything, to your
Yes.
life, to your force, everything.
Yes.
That's why media has been so powerful. It's been so effective.
It made subjects seem like God.
Exactly. And there it is, because if you look at the image they brought forth,
Yes.
as the image of God.
Yes.
And they used that image. My consort would tell me, right, and because he grew up here in the islands, how when they brought out this movie, and that would have been in the early 70s, this movie about hell and God, I forget the name of it now. It'll come to me at some point. But how, and obviously, the devil looked like us, of course, but God was this, white-bearded smiting dude, I like to call him. But the whole image, the television, and very few people had a television in his community. So wherever that one telly was, and then all the Moors would collect around this series or movie, and it was about hell, and if you didn't do as the God said, and he told me how, fear-inducing this was.
Yeah.
And if you understand how connected to the church our people are, but connected to this God that doesn't look like them in any fashion, and yet who wields a big stick.
Mm-hmm.
And they fear them so much. And so when people who come, the foreigners come, they actually see them as God.
Wow.
Really, I'm not. It might sound like I'm exaggerating. There's a man who's dark like me, and he was married at a point to a German woman, and he lived in Germany, and lived in England and various other places. And I remember him telling me how whenever a foreigner appeared in Treasure Beach, in this area, he absolutely thought it was God. I mean, absolutely, because how he was raised in the church as a child, of course,
Yes,
But,
yes.
I mean, absolutely. And he actually said, and of course I'll put it in inverted commas because we know racism is a construct, but he said he experienced more racism here on the island amongst his own than being as the foreigner in Germany, and we're not the foreigners there at all, actually.
Right.
But, so it's just amazing, and this was done with media, pictures,
Yeah.
images.
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words.
And it's the truth, is it not?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet we look at pictures that are our own, like, for instance, many of our symbols that have been hypothecated and turned into negative, and we would tear out our eyes against our own, the symbols that really are our power and ourselves.
Yeah.
They've done a very, very good job, but we're there, so they haven't succeeded.
Yeah. We're
Beyond. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Islam. I want to, one of the empresses mentioned something about the properties and the deeds and titles and something of that nature. I'm going to put a link in the chat to a video on YouTube. And it's just another. Yeah, and I don't really like to push the videos, done by we don't want to push too much of their information because we know it's hypothecated. But there's a video out there talking about how, and here the link is in the chat. Oops, wait a minute. Let me make sure I get it in the right part of the chat. There's a video where a foreign modern European is in the video talking about how the quote-unquote banks are not giving people the deeds to their quote-unquote homes anymore. Okay. What does that look like? That looks like Islam. I thought I put it in there. Yeah, I put it in the chat, Empress. It's up a little bit higher. They're not giving them the deeds to their domiciles, their homes, because they really kind of don't own them. And he talks about one of the foreigners who went into quote unquote Wells Fargo Bank, and they supposedly paid off the loan on their on the place that they're squatting in and occupying. And Wells Fargo, quote unquote, would not give them the deed. And Wells Fargo told them to go get a lawyer. So I'm putting the link to that video in the chat because I found it to be just an interesting little something that they're saying, that they're acting out there.
Islam, is that very recent?
It is very recent. Very, very, very recent. I think the video came out either today or yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what does the bank think they're gonna do with the deed? They still trying to. Yeah. So what is the bank? They still trying to trade it. Do with the deed?
You know what, Empress? They don't even have a deed that is lawful, and they know it.
Right. So why hold on to it like that?
Because they're keeping it.
They don't have it in their possession. They don't have it in their possession.
It's really in the state of the Moors. That's where it is.
Yes.
It never left.
Yes. Listen, they have to do what we tell them. And the fraud had to stop. It had to stop. They couldn't keep pretending like they're actually conveying property when they don't have the authority to convey anything. We liened the banks. They cannot convey anything.
Islam?
Islam. There's a little bit of echo coming. Echo coming.
Is that me?
Go ahead and go ahead.
I just wanted to say he also said that the banks are giving out no money down loans to so-called black and Hispanic. I thought that was pretty peculiar too. In the same piece, he said that.
Because they are still trying to see who will contract with them. And listen, they're not giving out any loans to any blacks or Hispanics. They're not. They're saying that they are, but they're not. They can say that, and then others, just like others have been saying, oh, we're hiring, and then when people get there, they're not hiring. The contracting is ended. It's done. It's finished. No more contracting. Because it's everything is back where it should be. And all we have to do is continue doing these processes that we're putting forth now. So we're going to start assisting each other with property acquisition, acquiring the properties and obtaining the properties. And the Moors who want to participate in the process, get your documentation and your paperwork ready in terms of the title to the property. You want to also do an allodial sovereign deed to rebut their fake deed. And do the research on what deeds look like so that you will know what to put in your affidavits. And then we also want to do a sovereign exchange on the public record for the market value of the property. And then we want to start having the city obtain the property and not, we could do things as individuals, but why, when all of the breaks and all of the, when I say breaks, all of the perks and the benefits can be gained through the city? Because the properties that we're wanting to govern at this time are going to be properties where not just one Moor can live there. It has to be something where on a larger scale, a much larger scale. Or for commerce, we need to be looking at all of that. I want to show you really quickly one last thing, a couple of last things. One of the things that I wanted to show you is that the U.S. State Department has been building mosques. And I'll go ahead and put this link in the chat so that you can look that up, because I've been looking around on that website, and it's so very interesting, the things that you find on these websites, because they're changing things. They're changing the way they do things. They're changing what's put up there and all of that. Let me see. There's a little bit of noise coming from somewhere, a little bit of rustling or something. Also, there's another video, it's not that long, about, and these are just some resources and some things that I saw in my study that I found very interesting and helpful. there's another video about how sovereign immunity works. And in listening to this foreign hybrid talk about sovereign immunity for the states, I can see now why, you know, states are why it's so important for us to continue to move in our status as the sovereign state and the fiduciaries to do what fiduciaries do. There's protection there for the fiduciary and for the person of the fiduciary regarding statehood and us moving on these properties. Okay, so that link is in the chat. And then another something that I wanted to show you really quickly, just for your, I had stated that I was going to show the protected person, how I protected my person, just for those who want to do the same thing. Let's see. I want to show you just really quickly how we did that. Let's see. Okay. So we used our fiduciary status and ability, and this is, so first we did all the things that we normally do, which is place a lien on any corpse or corporation, pretending to be police and pretending to be mayors and pretending to be governors and pretending to be cities and states and all of that. We lien all of that first. And then we called them into court, the corpses into court, and decapitated them and sent them on to Guantanamo Bay. And then we said, okay, now what we have left is a bankrupt entity that was previously claiming property and things and persons. So now that we know that we have our fiduciary document on the public record and we protect our person, we're going to use our fiduciary duty to get them to say that our person is protected. And when I say them, we're not even talking about foreigners or anything like that. We're talking about those who were previously debtors, and we're liquidating. And because we're liquidating, we use whatever measures that they had available to them. We take those and we use them. It's the same way where, you know, we just got finished putting a link in the chat about quote unquote Wells Fargo not issuing any deeds. They're not issuing deeds because we have, and I just told you about a Wells Fargo demonstration that I did 3 weeks ago. And because of that demonstration and the demonstrations of all the other Moors who demonstrated where Wells Fargo is concerned, we issue deeds from Wells Fargo. We do that. The same way that these letters here, these are put on the public record. So let me see. Okay, it should be showing. We said, okay, we'll get the letterhead from the previous debtors. We're going to use whatever we want to use to move forth and gain the properties and do the things that the city does because we're the city. And so we took the letterhead and said, okay, let us issue a public notice, protected person status, no contact order. And it's just a one-page document here that says, notice is hereby given by the City of Federal Way to include the Mayor's Office, the Police Department, and the City Council for Federal Way that the following person is protected at all times retroactively as stated by the trust of the people of Federal Way for whom said person does provide public service. All protected persons and their property shall not be contacted, approached, detained, or violated at any time in accordance with the Federal Way revised codes and all other applicable laws to include the supreme law of the land. And then I put my person. This is not their person because they don't have a person. They don't own any persons. They're debtors. So I put my person and the number here and the address here, published on the public record on July 27, 2022. And then we have here, sincerely, Jim Farrell, which is a former custodian that was previously doing business as mayor, and then Andy J. Huang, former custodian previously doing business as police chief. And then it's stamped here by King County Superior Court. And then we have another letter that we sent as well, City of Federal Way, all municipal court cases voided in favor of Pauline Ritchie, which is this person and not their person. It says, to whom it may concern, notice is hereby given and stated for the corrected public record by the City of Federal Way to include the Mayor's Office, the Federal Way Police Department, and the Federal Way City Council, that all Federal Way municipal court judgments against Pauline Ritchie are hereby voided entirely, retroactively, and forever in the favor of Pauline Ritchie, and all court records cleared of any and all alleged charges and warrants with regard to all City of Federal Way municipal court cases in accordance with United States law, the Constitution for the United States, 1789 and 1791, the Bankruptcy Act of 1933, the Emergency Banking Act of 1933, House Resolution 192 of 1933, and these are actually, we have made these the law, the bankruptcy law and the emergency banking law of 1933. Statutes for the Territory of Washington, 1855. That's not state of Washington. It's not anything of Washington. It is just Washington. Federal Way Revised Codes, U.S. Department of Justice, Tax Non-Obligated Public Law AA 222141, which is consular venue, and that's for all commerce, Supreme Court rulings, and all other applicable federal and state laws. This public statement includes the following non-felony cases, and these are cases that we had elevated, that we presented actually in our Article 3 court in the favor of my person. None of the alleged non-felony charges were a serious offense as defined by RCW 10.77.092. We hereby correct our records accordingly. The following additional information supports this public statement. And again, this is the City of Federal Way correcting the record. And who's the City of Federal Way? The Moors. We are the fiduciaries for the City of Federal Way. And we are actually the original Federal Way, not City of. We're Federal Way City. And we're the fiduciaries doing all types of business that needs to be done to liquidate and conclude anything done by any debtors. It says the status of protected person does retroactively belong to Pauline Ritchie as affirmed by the Supreme Court due to her public service and the trust placed in her by the people of the United States, the people of Washington, and the people of Federal Way. All protected persons and their property are protected at their stated will and shall not be approached, harmed, detained, or violated at any time in accordance with the Federal Way revised codes and all other applicable laws to include the supreme law of the land. And then those same two former custodians previously in the office of mayor and previously in the office of police chief, also their signatures are here. And this is also stamped by King County Superior Court. So, and placed on the public record on July 13, 2022. And then we took these to the custodians previously, former custodians previously in these offices, showing them the documentation. So that is how we protected our person. Protection of a person always starts with nationality. So let's just make sure we put that on the public record. You must be a sovereign living being, a sovereign living Moor. And we put all of our energies and processes into assisting Moors specifically, because we know that when Moors are protected, everyone else will be protected. So our job and our responsibility and our duty to our nation is to the Moors specifically, you know, and we haven't forgotten about anyone else. We haven't forgotten about the subjects. We haven't forgotten about citizens, and we haven't forgotten about protege Moors or sleeping Moors. But the things that we're doing now is to advance the empire where the Moors are concerned specifically, because, you know, we have many that are doing nationality out there on the public record, which we do as well. We have not thrown off or shirked that responsibility, but we also, it is in our best interest as a nation to move forward, okay? Because the Moors who have declared their nationality need to be able to access whatever it is that they need to access. Whatever they need to access. Domiciles and all of that, and we need to be in our offices doing our work on the land. So that's what we tailor our work and our energies towards. You know, is further enhancing and making life better for all of us. With that being said, are there any other questions, comments, or anything of that nature? Any wisdom? Anything else on the public record? Okay. Islam, we hereby adjourn this Congressional Assembly court action, and we will meet again on Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and that will be, let's see, just one moment. Let me make sure that I have the right. Yeah, that will be Thursday, September the 8th, at 7 p.m. Eastern. With that being said, peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Islam.
Islam.
Islam. Islam.
Islam. Peace.
Grand rising.
Grand Rising.
Thank you,
Peace and love.
Grand Rising.
Islam.
Islam. Gratitude to the empresses and the empress. Amen.
Islam.
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 Get out of it.